What do you got for me?
What's wrong with you people?
I got nothing for you.
What's wrong?
You're not David. How y'all feel this morning? I feel rotten. That's how I feel. Well, that was enough for me. We could have had the benediction right there. That was so good.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome to The Reformatory, the podcast for the local church and by the local church, and we are your local churchmen. My name is Josh, and I'm here, as always, with my co-host in crime, Captain Jack Barry. Jack, how are you, my friend?
Pretty good.
It's good to see you.
You know what's funny? So, when you call me Captain, in your mind, do you spell it in the proper way, or do you spell it CAP''N? Because I spell it that way in my mind whenever I hear this.
So you spell it like Captain Crunch, is what you're saying?
Yes,
like
I do.
Captain
Absolutely.
Crunch.
I want a more informal way of addressing me.
Okay. All right. Well, here's the thing. Like, I had never thought about how I spelled it in my head, but now, because I love you, just for you, it shall now forever be Captain. What's up, Captain? Or, when we get like real comfortable, we might have to save this for like, a Veterans Day or something like that. We go to Cap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Cap
that's
Jack.
True.
Cap Daddy.
Yes. Cap Daddy.
Cap Daddy. Jack, dude, we got man, we got stuff to talk about today. There's a part of me, a large part of me that's not looking forward to this episode. But some things need to be said. But dude, let's keep it chill, right? Let's keep things good. And why don't you hit us with the Reformatory Cigar of the Week? What do you got for us today?
Yes. So as per our monthly vibe is for cigars, September's for Sinistro.
Yes, it is.
So one of the cigars that I know Josh goes to, and I'm gonna give the details of this cigar, and then kind of go over to Josh to give more of the flavor notes and profiles. But one of the cigars that he's been going to that he likes a lot is the Last Cowboy by Sinistro. And so this cigar, yes sir, this cigar comes in a Maduro wrapper, but then also a natural wrapper as well too. So I'm going to start out with the Maduro details. So basically, wrapper is Connecticut broadleaf Maduro, binder is Mexican San Andreas, and then filler is Dominican Republic. And the Dominican Republic, so this is interesting. So there are certain tobaccos that are kind of a certain seed, or a certain specific type of Dominican Republic tobacco. This one is Piloto Cubano. So that's specifically what it says on the Maduro. The only thing, so the difference in the Maduro and the Natural is that the Natural has a wrapper of a Connecticut wrapper, and then the binder is Cameroon and Ecuadorian Sumatran. And then the fillers would be the same as well there. So these, I'm going to throw it over to Josh to give some tasting notes on these. I have smoked the Natural before because part of the Natural, there's a slight little part, I think on both maybe actually too. There's actually, on both of them, there is a slight part of the wrapper that has like this candela tipped to it. So there's about like maybe the half of a quarter of the third of the first third of the cigar. I know, math is hard.
Math is hard.
Is like a candela little wrap on the wrapper, which gives you kind of like a grassy note, and then it comes into some more finishes. But I'm going to go over to Josh to talk a little bit about flavor profile.
Yeah, man. So the Last
these
Cowboy.
cigars.
So I have it primarily in the Maduro, so it's a medium to heavier cigar, right? So it's not something you're really going to start out the morning with. This is a good after dinner smoke, right? And enjoy it with, again, just kind of the usual pairings that we suggest: a Diet Coke, a little bit of chocolate. It's just something sweet to kind of keep the stomach juices from churning too bad. Make sure to smoke it on a full stomach, but it's the San Andreas binder that I think really comes through in this. In that, most Maduros, you're going to get the dark flavors. It's going to be earthy. You're going to get those dark coffee notes, right? Some alfalfa notes in there, leather, like some people say. But even that one, I always find leather to be such a funny tasting note, because I want to be whose job was it to just suck on leather and be all right,
yeah.
I think it tastes like leather. It's you know what leather tastes like. That's good to know. So I always feel so stupid giving that as a tasting note. But it tastes like what you would imagine leather to taste like. But the Dominican filler is really, I think, the star of it, in that you're going to get those dark notes, but it hits you with a little bit of zest, a little bit of acid, a little bit of flavor, and a little almost citrusy vibe with that Dominican stuff. It just makes a well-rounded cigar. I think it's one of the best cigars that Sinistro's put out. I have the Last Cowboy often. I think the name is cool. I think the branding is cool. It's a fantastic stick. It's only I want to say it's $8 to $10. It's not an expensive stick, and if you have the chance, you should go get it, because it's I think one of the best offerings Sinistro has. So, The Last Cowboy by Sinistro. September is for Sinistro. That is the Reformatory Cigar of the Week. Go and smoke, my friends, to the glory of God. All right, Captain. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
let's see. How do we want to start this? So here's the thing, man. Both you and I have a unifying experience when it comes to Acts 29, right? People know that's what we're going to be talking about. It's going to be in the title of this episode, so we might as well not beat around the bush. I want to preface this episode by saying this. Some hard things are going to be said. Some things are going to be said that I think Jack and I have been sitting on. I know I've been sitting on for quite a few years, and just haven't said anything. One, and there's multiple reasons for that, and this is the preface that I want to get. There are many churches and individuals that are in the A29 Network that I love very dearly, and that I cherish and that I care for. Because of that, I want to be very careful with how we approach this episode, and it's not just a People's Magazine hit piece, ranting and raving on an entire network. But Jack and I, based on our own experiences and based on the experiences of individuals that we have talked to, as well as the experiences that we see just in the general working in and out of the network, I've got a few things to say about it, and they're hard things to say just because they bring up a lot of memories and I think past frustrations of different events that happen. So I'll just hop right in, Jack, and then maybe I'll let you go over, because I don't want this to be a super long ep. One, because my camera will go out. That just seems to be the way of things. Back in 2018, 17 or 18, I was part of an Acts 29 church in Marysville, Washington, called Damascus Road. And loved it. The Lord used the many individuals in that church to kind of pull me and my wife out of some real bad church hurt pain that we had experienced at a church before that. And I entered into that church at that time not really wanting anything to do with church. I didn't want to be a part of it. I didn't want to commit to it. I didn't want to be a member. I had just gotten burned real bad, and I didn't want that to happen again. And the Lord used one of the pastors specifically to really shepherd my heart, to care for me in a way that I've never been cared for before, and bring me out of that. to the place where I was longing to be at that church. I was longing to be around people. I wanted to serve and become part of the membership. And it was such a wonderful testament to God's grace in my life to bring me to that place and to those people. Our time at that church ended very badly, as well as over half of the church's time, people in that church. Due to the ego, and I don't use that word flippantly, the arrogance of the lead pastor, Acts 29 swooped in on his request and did something that I didn't know you were allowed to do, right? Because the lead pastor was having issues with some of the other members of the elder team, and those issues basically were them calling him out on tyrannical leadership, very Mark Driscoll type stuff. It's like, this is the kind of stuff that we're seeing, this is the kind of stuff that we're hearing, and we're concerned, and we want to help. That didn't go over well. Acts 29, the network, came in and comprised a oversight board, a provisional board of elders to take over the church, comprised of a couple of the directors and a couple of the local pastors in the general Washington area. There might have been one from Oregon, I can't remember. And they took over the church without input from the congregation, without even telling the congregation until after the fact. And what that resulted is the two elders that brought the concerns to the lead pastor were removed from leadership without any vote, without any biblical process, without any type of biblical reasoning whatsoever. And the congregation, rightly so, was absolutely, one, taken aback, and two, we wanted answers. We wanted answers because, there's so much drama to this story, but one of the main frustrating ones was that the oversight board that came in from Acts 29 was comprised of very close friends of the lead pastor, to the point where a very quick social media search sees them on vacations together. They're going to Disneyland together. They're going to the beach together. They're good friends. And when this conflict of interest was brought up, the answer that was given by the regional director was, well, pastors can have friends, right? So this resulted in the two pastors being removed, and the church splitting wide open, right down the middle. And they saw that as a necessary and satisfactory outcome to the situation. Now, one of those directors has since been removed from Acts 29 due to similar things, and he's going off and starting his own thing now. And in very Acts 29 fashion, the local church there rebranded, changed their name, changed everything, relaunched, and started over like nothing happened. All the while, so many families in that local church, myself and my wife included, had our hearts ripped out. And it still hurts to this day. Like, there will be times where my wife and I will reminisce to the times that we had at that church, and it will make us weep because of what we lost and what was taken away from us. And that is one story. And again, that is such a short version. There are so many other just horrible things that happened throughout that, at the hands of Acts 29 leadership. But here's the problem, Jack. That is one story among hundreds and hundreds of churches that Acts 29 has left behind, just shattered and broken. Like the amount of bodies that are behind the Acts 29 tidal wave is horrendous. And there's something about Acts 29, Jack, and I have my theories, but there's something about the network that attracts a certain type of leader and a certain type of personality. And I think that that's one of the problems, is you have such a focus in Acts 29 on the lead pastor. And that lead pastor, if you look across the board, right, and obviously there are outliers here and there, but if we're going to look at the type of person that Acts 29 attracts as a lead pastor, it's very, very similar.
Yes.
Very entrepreneurial, very A-type personality, very vision and image focused, and usually a little brash, a little rough around the edges, and arrogant. Now, is that true across the board? No. Like I said, I don't want to lose the preface of this episode. There are many churches and many people in Acts 29 that I love dearly. And I would say, but I would say, Jack, and then I'll throw it over to you, that I think those leaders in the Acts 29 network that are doing well and are leading their people well are doing it in spite of Acts 29.
Yes.
I think they are the outliers that I have come, and I've come to believe that in my experience with Acts 29 and my experience talking to people through Acts 29. And it's to the point, Jack, where something like, I'm kind of tired of seeing it happen. I'm honestly tired of seeing it happen. I'm tired of seeing people hurt. And Acts 29 has a lot to answer for. And there's a lot that happens in that network that just seems to get swept under the rug. And often you just see the rebrand and the relaunch, and then the bodies are still left behind the wave asking what happened and what about us.
Yeah. I can comment on this as well too, because there was a recent this last Lord's Day was definitely a situation in which we had several families. I would say a couple. I don't know about several. How about a couple? A couple families in our now bigger kind of more one service oriented gathering at a middle school that we meet at in South Tacoma. And one of those families I knew from my previous church. And they had, I was kind of feeling out why they were there. And I kind of led in with, the husband, the guy that I know of this family. He goes, well, why did you come here to this church? And I said, honestly, like most people, I was kind of tired of the transparency issues that we were having at my previous church. I was kind of tired of certain leadership dynamics as well, too. I was tired of secrets being swept under the rug. The congregation didn't know about these things, and only the elders would say stuff because it was elder-led, or elder-ruled, excuse me. Not elder-led, elder-ruled. And that elder rule model has thus not produced any kind of fruit sense, because what I'm hearing now is that the lead pastor preaches twice, maybe a month, and how can I say this? Has a little bit of a bloated paycheck, and on top of it, there's some things that are going on in which we don't know if church funds are being used towards entrepreneurial endeavors or what. So that is concerning. And that is I would say that's an that is a former Mars Hill church that's independent, that is sometimes in talks with other Acts 29 churches. They're not part of Acts 29, but they're Acts 29 adjacent.
Yeah.
And then you have a official Acts 29 church that their pastor was brought up on plagiarizing his sermon
from
H.B. Charles Jr.
Sure.
So you have, man, this is what you see. I'm gonna go back to the scriptures, because this is something that I felt, and it's something that we've been going through in my Bible study, and it's also something that we talk about regularly here on this podcast, is the fact that when Jesus came in his last week of living a somewhat normal human life, how about that? When he went to Jerusalem, he was proclaiming certain prophetic judgment on the leaders of Israel because they did not lead the people in the ways that God had instructed them. They had led the people astray, and they basically became corrupt. It was all about them. Now, I want to preface this, too, on the way that your church will go is because your leaders will lead in a certain capacity.
Yep.
And they will lead the flock astray to that certain capacity. So, when we talk about things like Acts 29, when we talk about things like churches and leaders failing, it absolutely is on leaders not leading in a way that incorporates what Jesus did. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't incorporate what we do at the Reformatory too, which is we stand on the model of you keep reforming.
Right.
You need to be consistently reforming. You need to be consistently looking at your church and reforming. You need to be looking at yourself and reforming.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, that didn't happen overnight. Those situations did not happen overnight. What led to those situations could be compromise. It could be laziness. It could be a whole scatter of things. But the fact is that when I don't see shepherds shepherding people, mm-hmm. that is like me looking at my son and like neglecting all of his needs. Mm-hmm. Not feeding him, not helping him, not soothing for him, not caring for him.
Yeah.
I think that I experienced that the most at my last church with our lead pastor. And that has not progressed in ways that should have been remedied from things.
Yeah.
And so I think that what Josh and I are seeing is a constant gambit of people coming out from big church planning efforts and movements that are embodying these very unbiblical ways of shepherding people. I would say just leading. They're not even shepherding sometimes, which I'm seeing more and more. It is completely I'm in the pulpit, I'm preaching, I'm the, face of this, brand, so to say, or anything along those lines. Mm-hmm. And everybody else can fall in behind me and say yes.
Yeah.
I think that we're seeing that more and more, and that is the biggest concern. Not only that, but then also the dynamics in which your church members are not being shepherded. They're not being told anything. They're not being included on anything at all when it comes to the health of the leadership, when it comes to the health of the church. So,
yeah, and this issue. This issue goes up the totem pole, right? Like if we're going to look at kind of the starting point of Acts 29, we look at Driscoll, we look at Matt Chandler, right? Who's just honestly,
yeah,
I know Chandler's had some good stuff, and I've appreciated a lot that Chandler has put out, but man, like it's a ministry that has been kind of marked by a lot of scruples, and you ask at a certain point, how many times are we going to go around? This merry-go-round before we're just like, maybe enough's enough, and here's the thing, folks, look, those that have been with us for a long time know that the Reformatory is we're not a discernment ministry. In fact, we hate discernment ministries, right? we kind of rail against those just because we don't find them helpful, right? Then that's not the purpose of this podcast. We're not just trying to get a gotcha and be like, be basically Reformed People's Magazine, right? That's not what we're trying to do. There goes my light. Anyway, the purpose of this podcast, and this episode particularly, is because, like, as I said before, there are people that I love in this network, and I'm seeing this network get worse and worse by personal experience and observation. And it's to the point now to where if I hear that someone is part of the A29 Network, or they're looking to get into it, it is no longer a neutral thing for me. It's not. If I hear someone's associated with the A29 Network with as bad as it's gotten, and it seems like it continues to get worse and worse with just covering stuff up and hurting people and blowing up churches with just, it seems like reckless abandon. Man, like, my discernment red flags go off. Because I don't know, like, I don't know what this person's about, right? And here's the thing: there's a lot of issues that we see with X29 that we've already talked about, right? But I think one of the main ones that has kind of prompted this discussion is just the lack of change. This has been going for a while. And it seems like whenever anybody reaches out, when this whole church thing blew up with me, I didn't roll over on it. I marched it up very high on the totem pole, to the point where I actually had a short exchange over instant message with Matt Chandler. I still have that paper trail. I still have the receipts, and it yielded nothing. Unqualified men continue to be put into positions of leadership without biblical vetting and are allowed to run amok. And we see this happen again and again and again. And story after story of another Acts 29 pastor plagiarizing, another Acts 29 pastor being removed for tyrannical leadership, another Acts 29 director being removed for misconduct of some sort. And at a certain point, when the fruit is this rotten, we got to question what's going on at the roots. And that's my point. Is if Acts 29 is going to succeed, it is going to succeed in their mission to plant churches, right? And to be a church planting network and plant healthy churches and churches that have longevity, churches that have deep roots. They got to get their house in order. And I've been saying this, on a personal level for a while. But I mean, I'm going on now 4 years from this church, experience that happened. And I, when it first happened, I thought, well, maybe it's an isolated thing. And Jack, I'll tell you, man, over the last 4 or 5 years, it's not isolated.
Nope.
I've seen it again and again and again. And my friends, like, here's the thing. I am not advocating, and you will never hear me advocate unless it's a very specific situation for you to leave your church. But if you are in the Acts 29 network, I would plead with you to take inventory of how your church makes decisions, how they bring in pastors. Because, like Jack said, how the pastors lead will determine the health of the church. And I'm talking to you, and again, like, I don't say this lightly, but I do not trust Acts 29's methodology when choosing leaders. And it's based on a proven track record. This isn't just me having beef with Acts 29 because they blew my church up, right? Like, I am grieved by that immensely, still to this day. And I can't talk or think about it too much without getting weepy again. But my friends, like, take heed lest you fall. There needs to be a change that happens. And it's coming from someone who was in the network that, again, has, like, I know of churches and I know of people that are in the network that I love dearly. And it's hard for me to sit on the sidelines, no longer in the network, just waiting for it to happen, waiting for it to happen to them. And there's been too many instances of me sitting back, Jack, and I'm not I'm not kidding here, sitting back and saying, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem. Something's going to happen there. Nobody's doing anything. And then it happens. And people are hurt. And the church blows up. And I'm left like, well, should I have said something? Do we not say anything? Like what do we do here? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's... So I think that's, at the end of the day, that's just kind of the reason for the podcast is... there are too many people that I love and in the network that I don't want to see hurt in the way that I was hurt. I don't want to see their church blow up in the way that my church was blown up. And Jack, I think something needs to be done, man. There needs to be a complete overhaul of the structure. There needs to be a complete gutting of leadership, a complete restructuring of how do we make our decisions when something goes wrong in a church. Do we actually have the right to swoop in, take over the church, and make decisions for them? Or do we need to make sure that we are empowering the congregations of those churches to help with that? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so much methodology that needs to shift, and it doesn't seem like there's any desire for that to shift to happen.
Yeah, and on top of it, too, there was a recent incident that really caught my attention. There were two guys on the A29 board. It was a church in Colorado. I don't necessarily agree with everything this church in Colorado did, but whatever. People are people. People get on social media and say stuff, and sometimes you just have to take stuff with a grain of salt on a lot of situations. A certain pastor of this church had said some certain things. I don't think they were that. I mean, I disagree with a lot of his viewpoints, but nevertheless, it wasn't something that was like, you need to be excommunicated kind of language. You know, I think it's just a very tertiary difference of opinion, difference of philosophy and theology of how you view mission and different theological views, right? So he was voicing those kind of views on Twitter, and these two guys from A29 executives, one of which was a former, basically took over from Mark Driscoll from when he stepped down. He got on the call, and this was recorded. He got on the call, and there's another guy that we know that was on the call as well, too, and they effectively kicked them out of the network. And it was so weird because they kicked them out of the network for really no reason of what the pastors were talking. It's like, where is our sin that you're kicking us out for? Where have we disobeyed? We've brought up questions. We've done this and done that. Like, what is the thing that you're kicking us out for? And nothing was said. And when you have freewheeling executives in a big, bloated national church planning movement that can freewield an excommunication of a church by just disagreeing with their opinions on things, that is not what the scriptures call us to. Yeah, we got a big problem. That's not what the scriptures call us to, and that's not what the scriptures do. Where's your testing of these folks? Like, where is the discernment in which you should be asking certain questions of these people and of these leaders if they've actually committed sin, or you just don't like them? You just don't like them. You don't like their theological stance on things. You don't like their opinion. So, hey, we'll kick them out. Yeah. That's not how you go about things. That's just not.
No, it's not.
And so I don't know if both of those people are still in. I don't think they are in the executive role anymore. But nevertheless, they're still part of Acts 29 in some capacity of what I know of. That could be different. And so my challenge to a lot of people is, like, I don't know how many times we have to basically revisit the destruction of Mars Hill again and replay it and then try and imitate it. Maybe we'll just imitate Mars Hill again to see how far it's going to take us, and then find out that it'll take us to the depths of depravity that it took back then originally.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times we have to do that. I don't know how many times we have to be where God is giving commands, God is making covenant, and then next thing you know, we are just like Israel. We will break that covenant. Mm-hmm. Just give it a little time, and then we'll break it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, man.
So
it is the question. And look, at the end of the day, and we've got to wrap up, but at the end of the day, one of the main problems, and there are many, but we have unqualified men leading the ship, bringing on other unqualified men to lead churches. And unqualified leaders are going to do what unqualified leaders do. They're going to lead in a unqualified way. And souls are hurt, churches break, and those bodies are left behind the wave. And it's to the point to where we've seen it time and time again, and we have to now begin to, we should have been asking a long time ago, but it's to the point where we have to start asking the question, are we worried about this? Are we going to do anything about this? Because I'm not seeing the urgency that I think this should have, like all of the focus that the Southern Baptist Convention got for all of the things that are going wrong with it, and rightly so. I mean, look, there's stuff in that convention that needs to get taken care of. But why is this so quiet? And I know that there are individuals that are, that have voiced their opinions, some voicing their opinions in a more biblical way than others. Let's be clear and fair here, right? We still, just because we might be trying to come against biblical process does not mean that we can abandon biblical process. And too many people fall into that trap of just going off the deep end and trying to burn the entire thing down. And you just kind of render yourself ineffective as a force for that change just by your own conduct. So let's be careful not to do that. But Jack, there are churches and people in that network that I still love and I still cherish. Mm-hmm. And as someone who spent time in that network and was burned very badly by it, I know people that were in that church that haven't gone back to church because of that experience. All right. I know people that will never ever step into another church that is even loosely affiliated with A29 because of that experience. I know relationships that have not been mended and possibly won't unless one party repents.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a reality.
Yeah. And
we need to see some change. Some change needs to happen. And we need some leaders need to start taking some things seriously, man. So it's a heavy up, Jack. There's probably a lot more that can and should be said, but we're going to leave that right there. We might revisit this again, but I don't want it to appear again like a Reformed People's Magazine hit piece like this.
Sure.
I genuinely care for these folks, and I know you do too. And some answers need to happen, and change needs to happen.
When I see families that are coming from an Acts 29 church that tells them if they leave membership, well, that Acts 29 church says, well, we're the only place that has the gospel here.
Yeah, that's a real phrase, by the way, people, that was actually uttered.
Yeah. So that absolutely is a red flag. Mm-hmm. And then on top of it, you actually taint the Christians that are actually trying to leave your church, because now they're probably, are we going to have the same problem at the different church that we try to become members at or that we try to attend? So you're not doing, so for those leaders that are saying those things like that, you're not doing anybody favors right there. You're not doing the spread of the gospel any favors at all, one bit. You're not doing anything for Catholicity to come alongside brothers and sisters and spread the gospel together as a cooperative nature of churches in your region or in the area that you're in. Like, you're not doing anybody any favors. You're not doing the Lord any favors either by saying that stuff. If you're giving anybody any favors, it's Satan.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
It's very much it's tough, but I think Josh and I are strictly in the camp of we care about the shepherding of people's hearts in the local church. And
Amen.
when we don't see that in local churches, there needs to be change, there needs to be repentance, and there needs to be a level of prophetic utterance. And when I say prophetic utterance, I mean a level of you guys are not doing things in which leaders of God should be doing. So, yeah.
Yep. Rough ep. Hard things. Very hard things, but they're necessary, I think. Might be people that listen to this and disagree, and I totally get it. I get it. Like, you can't have a topic like this without ruffling feathers, and I understand, but it's not coming from a place of malice. It's coming from a place of care, and we hope that comes through in this. Jack, my friend, why don't you get us out of here, bud, and we'll go record some Patreon eps and hopefully lighten the mood up a little bit.
Yeah. If you really do want to engage on this topic with us, if you want to talk to us further about this, if you're going through a very tough time within your local church, and you just need somebody to talk to, you can send us a DM. You can send us a message on the Sociables, if you will. We are at the Facebook, the Instagram, if you will, and the Sociable, formerly known as Twitter, X, all at the tag at Reformatory Pod.
That's right.
I'm not my jovial self because this episode is pretty. It's pretty heavy, y'all.
I get you, buddy. I get you.
So
I get you.
We would appreciate if you have any questions, if you want follow-ups, please hit us up at those accounts. Like I said, at Reformatory Pod is where you can find us. So,
yep.
Yeah.
You can support the Reformatory in a number of ways. If you're on Apple or Spotify, we ask that you give us a little rating and a review. We really would appreciate that. And it helps get the podcast out to more people, and more people can be encouraged to make their local church central. We're on YouTube, so if you want to not only listen to this downer of an episode, but you want to see this downer of an episode, you can head on over to YouTube. Head to our Reformatory podcast page. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications, as the kids say. Last but not least, we have a Patreon, and for only $5 a month, it's less than a Starbucks drink, people, especially. It's less than a pumpkin spice latte, I can tell you that for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Because I bought many of those for my wife this month, and I'm just telling you, it's less than that. You could become a Patreon supporter, get that exclusive content, multiple bonus episodes every week, and if you do so, our pledge to you is that your name shall be hallowed.
Hallowed, Sam.
Hallowed through the halls of the podcast. There it went, dude. I knew we weren't gonna make it. I knew we weren't gonna make it. All right, right, that 42-minute mark. Well, we thank you all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next step of the Reformatory.